The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy, a Week 1 rankings re-up. We've already done the position-by-position, player-by-player debate with Jake Seeley in long form. That's up on the channel right now. Sub to the channel while you're here. Smash the like as well. Additionally, if you just want to see the rankings, which will get updated before every single one of the games every day throughout the course of the season, you hit the link down in the description. Everything is in the MMN newsletter right now, and I have updated said rankings. But let's get into the news that's happened over the weekend, which has affected the rankings since we first released it on Thursday evening. The big one is Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been placed on the NFL reserve list, so he is out for 4 games with PTSD issues. This is actually something that Seeley brought up during the show, and Samaje Perine will now officially play in the Week 1 game against the Ravens on Thursday evening. All this to say, I think this actually helps out Pacheco, obviously, in Week 1, because I don't know how ingrained Perine is with the Chiefs' offense. I'm sure he's going to get a snap share. I would expect him to take probably 20, 25% maybe of the snaps in the backfield, but I really do like this for Isaiah Pacheco. He is up to number 8 in the running back rankings for Week 1. Now, we'll see how this goes throughout the course of Week 1, 2, 3, and 4. I could see the gap between them closing if Perine ends up working in that Jerick McKinnon role, both in the red zone and in the passing game. But for right now, we have Isaiah Pacheco, whose underdog prop for Thursday evening is quite low for receptions. It's 2.5, so you might want to go the higher on that one and see where it goes for you. Additionally, code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now is going to get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And there's also a free square for Thursday Night Football with Travis Kelce. So you put in Travis Kelce, you put in Isaiah Pacheco, higher than 2.5 receptions. And I really like the Derrick Henry higher than 6.5 receiving yards in this game. So all of a sudden you have a 5.5 to 1 on your hands with a free square to go along with it, because the Travis Kelce is a 0.5 over for yardage. So use code Mayo, get yourself that underdog bonus, and then use it on that, and you're off to the races. Also, here's the thing. I'm giving away $25,000 on Underdog this year for a season-long pick'em contest. So if you have an Underdog handle, hit the description, fill out the Google form. It takes about, 10 seconds to fill out, and you can get your hands on first prize is $5,000, second prize is $3,000. It is the perfect way to keep yourself engaged at a very low cost. You only have to make 180 picks over over 180 weeks, over 18 weeks of the season. You can play an 8-banger for $1 every single week, and then add on 2 or 3 towards the end, and all of a sudden you're spending like $40 with a chance to win $5,000. So code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy and fill out the Google form down in the description. The other Chiefs news that we got this week is that Hollywood Brown is going to miss Week 1. This we knew, but there is a chance that he is available to play against Cincinnati in Week 2 with the extended layoff between Thursday Night Football and the Chiefs Week 2 game. I still probably wouldn't expect him back. So the shakedown, as we're looking for it right now, is Rashee Rice is going to play. He's going to be the highest ranked of all of the Chiefs receivers. Obviously, Kelce would be ranked higher than him. Not a receiver, a tight end. Well, he is a receiver, but he has that tight end eligibility, which makes it oh so sweet. So 22 is where Rashee Rice comes in the rankings right now, because we saw the Chiefs, outside of that game where they absolutely toned Houston a few years ago, they came out quite flat against the Lions a year ago offensively. So I wouldn't expect huge numbers for the Chiefs offense. And that's not the Chiefs team that we saw a year ago either. They weren't dropping 50 on everyone. Even in the playoff game against Baltimore, that wasn't the case. So Rice, I have conservatively ranked at 22nd in the rankings. Then Xavier Worthy is second amongst all Chiefs receivers right now. After that, you could potentially try to throw in Justin Watson. Maybe you do some Mecole Hardman, although I do not like Mecole Hardman all that much, unless it's like a Week 18 game and he's the only receiver playing on the team. But I hear in Week 1, that's not going to be so much the case. So for the rankings this week, it's going to be Kelce at the top, Pacheco inside the top 10, inside the top 25 for Rashee Rice, then inside the top 40 for Xavier Worthy. Obviously, Mahomes is a must start if you have him. Mark Andrews was seen practicing on Friday, and now he has been taken off any any injury designation for the Ravens. Another underdog piece or prop that you can put in to any slip, or even if you just want to bet it independently at any sports book at plus money, Isaiah Likely's over-under for receptions this week is 2. Now, it's not that he can't get 2 with Mark Andrews playing. It's just that he's going to be running fewer routes. He's going to be playing fewer snaps for when the line was released. So if you want to jump on that now, it's plus 140. That's probably either going to go down to 1.5, 1, or at least have severe negative money coming in on it. It is currently rated the most valuable prop of the week so far by our Run the Sims projections at plus 140. I believe that's on DraftKings if you want to go check that out right now. Additionally, on Underdog, if you want to throw that in to the one we talked about earlier, it takes it from 5.5 to 1 to 11 to 1 if you go lower than 2 receptions on Isaiah Likely. But Mark Andrews ends up becoming a must play. I'm still a bit pensive because he hasn't really practiced all training camp, but he's back in there now. He's going to be healthy. He's a top 7 tight end for the week, but I mean, listen, if he scores a touchdown, he could be number 1, but I'd say on overall volume, he's a little bit lower than your Kelce's and McBrides and Laporta's of the world, at least until we see how he's completely ingrained in a newer look offense for the Ravens. More news, Marshawn Lloyd in the Friday night football game in Brazil with his hamstring injury is back at practice. That means he'll probably continue to take over for Emmanuel Wilson. Josh Jacobs is in that game as well and is going to be the starter. We'll see how much run Lloyd actually gets, and we don't know if he's going to be active or not as of yet, but being back at practice with that soft tissue injury is actually something I'm actually quite happy about to see how he gets worked in. Now, normally soft tissue injuries really scare me when the guy is supposed to be a starter and then you have to give him a full starter's workload. So usually what happens is that's not going to end up being the case and they end up playing significantly fewer snaps than you would have anticipated. In my mind right now, this means a big uptick for Josh Jacobs, and I actually do like the Josh Jacobs over on receptions and receiving game against the Eagles, because the Eagles retained most of the pieces that made them one of the best pressure defenses in football a year ago. And with the Packers, what we saw in games that were either close or games where they were trailing, more running for Jordan Love, more dump offs for Jordan Love to the backfield. And if Josh Jacobs is going to have almost a monopoly on that backfield in week 1, what he doesn't get going on the ground, he might be able to pick up through the air and really solidify a base for you this week at running back. And then obviously in easier matchups, it's going to be much better for Josh Jacobs. But keep an eye on Lloyd as we go forward, because he does seem, with A.J. Dillon out for the year, one of the better handcuffs in football. We'll just see how much that hamstring can hold up and how much playing time and the role that maybe he has in the first few weeks of the season. If you have a watch list in your league, throw him on the watch list right now. All right? The Athletics' Todd Archer believes that Rico Waddle is the favorite to lead the Cowboys in carries this season. Now, does that mean he's going to have a passing game role? This we do not know. The completely washed up Dalvin Cook, which we saw last year in New York, is on the team. Obviously, Zeke is there. Zeke was far less washed up with the Patriots last year than I could have ever imagined. However, if this is Dwaddle's backfield, that could mean it's like 45% of the snaps go to Dwaddle, 40 for Ezekiel Elliott, and then like 20 for Dalvin Cook or whoever the hell they want to bring in. Plus, Dak's still going to get a few rushing attempts himself. It's not great news for anyone in this backfield. That's why I have not boosted up the prospects of Waddle all that much. He's still in the mid-30s in terms of running back rankings for week 1. Zeke is just outside the 40s. I couldn't imagine inserting Dalvin Cook into my lineup, so he remains unranked for week 1. Don't want that guy anywhere near my lineup. My one concern is bringing Zeke back could have been, well, especially with Tony Pollard last year and how inefficient he was near the goal line. It's not like they were like, well, Pollard's not working out, let's put Waddle in to see what he can do. No, that never happened. And then they bring back Zeke. I assume he's going to get at least first crack of being their goal line guy. And if the Athletic is reporting that Waddle might lead in carries, well, that's great and everything if it's between the 20s and you don't catch passes. That makes you pretty non-valuable in terms of a fantasy starter on half the touches, plus the goal line work and passing attempts. Even at a 40% snap share, Zeke could still end up being the most valuable guy in this backfield. I hope that's not how it turns out because I do have Waddle ranked higher than Zeke at the moment. But going into week 2 and week 3, once we see what the split is going to be, albeit in a very tough matchup against the Browns, especially on the ground, we'll see how the utilization of that backfield is going forward. So we'll have a better idea moving forward. I just don't see a ton of upside both in this backfield with how much the Cowboys like to pass and the matchup that they have in week 1. They're both the fringiest of fringe starts. I do like Waddle a little bit more than Zeke in that regard if we're going into it blind in week 1, which I hear we are, because none of us are from the future. Since the last time we spoke, we were speculating about what is going to happen to Brandon Aiuyk. Well, we found out what the actual story is going to be there. He signed a 4-year, $120 million extension with the San Francisco 49ers. As of this recording, Trent Williams has not signed with the 49ers yet. That does affect that entire offense as he is the key cog on the offensive line. I do not expect him to play Monday night against the Jets. The problem with Aiuyk in this matchup is he's probably going to be pretty rusty. Obviously, he knows the playbook, but you'd have to anticipate there's probably going to be less time for Brock Purdy to throw without Trent Williams around. And then you probably get Brandon Aiuyk matched up a lot of the time, at least, against a both good Jets defense, but primarily with Sauce Gardner. So he's going to have to be hyper efficient in this game to come through. It's not to say that Brandon Aiuyk is a bench player for you in fantasy this week. I mean, God willing, if you have 3 better options, go with the 3 better options. But he is not a wide receiver 1 right now, and I have Deebo Samuel ranked ahead of him as we might not get a full complement of snaps. And I know that they are hurting at the wide receiver position right now in terms of different players to throw out, but without extended more time without Trent Williams for Brock Purdy to pass, you might see more dump-offs to both Deebo, who runs those shorter A-dot routes, or even garners some carries out of the backfield, or to McCaffrey. I mean, that's one of the primary reasons that McCaffrey is there, that when the running game isn't working, you can incorporate him into the passing game to get going. So outside the top 20 is where I'm going with Brandon Aiuyk at the moment. A fringe yellow type start, not a full go green start on Aiuyk. I'd much rather play Deebo Samuel in week 1. We'll see what happens, then we'll reassess from there. Additionally, with the wide receiver holdouts, we saw Jefferson get paid, Lamb get paid, Aiuyk get paid. As of now, Jamar Chase still hasn't been paid. Is he going to play in week 1? I'm going to guess he's going to be out there. They'll get something done. But even Zach Taylor is just playing it by ear at this moment. So we'll reassess on Friday evening what happens if Jamar Chase does look like he's going to sit out. If he hasn't practiced by Friday, he's probably not going to play in week 1, especially with the Bengals as big favorites. There's a game to miss him. This could probably end up being the game. So I bumped down Jamar Chase in the wide receiver rankings for week 1 to number 9, and I bumped up T. Higgins to inside the top 15 of receivers this week. Now, if Jamar Chase is out, T. Higgins ends up becoming number 1, and I'll have to do a real assessment of who I want between Jermaine Burton or Yeshmash as the wide receiver 2. And it's probably like a fringe flip a coin between them if you're in dire needs, which you probably don't need to be in week 1. There's very few injuries. There you have no bye weeks. You should be able to fill out an entire roster where you're trying to guess where the Bengals wide receiver 2 is if Jamar Chase is out. That's probably not something that you really want to fall back on. But obviously T. Higgins becomes a fantastic play if that's the case. I think he's a very good chance of outscoring Jamar Chase this week anyway. I'd still have to go with the pedigree of Chase because of that big play ability. But I do think that even if Chase ends up going on Sunday, he's probably not going to play 100% of snaps. He's probably going to play somewhere in like that 60 to 75 range to make sure that his conditioning can get back up. You don't want to throw a cold player superstar, especially if you've paid him by this point. So he goes out and pulls a hammy in week 1. That you absolutely do not want. The Bengals were riddled with so many early season injuries. They rushed Joe Burrow back to play early in the season last year. Now, obviously, that didn't end up working out too well. He ended up with a wrist injury coming off the calf injury, but he clearly wasn't right for the first few weeks of the season, and then he gets hurt. They don't want to go through that again and have another lost season. If this team's serious about competing for a Super Bowl, you're going to need a 100% Jamar Chase when it actually counts. And what I hear, well, the games do count in the standings. They can win week 1 without Jamar Chase playing 100% of the snaps. Just simply having him out there and ramping up his conditioning going forward is what they'll want to do. So he's down to number 9. He can still make a huge fantasy impact even on, I don't want to say limited snaps, because limited in my mind thinks like, 30%, 40% of snaps. It's going to be way more than that. It just might not be 100. That's why I was a little bit pensive not to rank him. I initially had him ranked at number 4. I've bumped him down the list to number 9. Still a must start, but look, if you're feeling queasy about it, maybe you make a different choice. I wouldn't, but hey, I completely understand if that's something that you want to do. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharger, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Few other news and notes. Adam Schefter is reporting that Leonard Fournette is going to visit the Colts. Wouldn't worry too much about that one. Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, full go. Josh Downs is progressing better for the Colts with his high ankle sprain, but that was suffered on August 7th. And right now we are still, I guess we'll be just outside of the 4 to 6 week window that normally you see with a high ankle sprain. I wouldn't expect him to play in week 1, which means that Mitchell will probably end up playing the majority or at least plurality of the snaps in his spot with Anthony Richardson. But there still is an outside chance that if we see him practice on Thursday or Friday that he squeezes himself back in. I like Downs more than Mitchell as a fantasy project this year if you're in a deeper league, 14-team, 16-team league, for a bench player in a full point PPR that maybe you can boost up. We very clearly saw in the limited sample with Anthony Richardson a year ago that he and Josh Downs did have a connection, and instead of taking off running every single time, checking down with those short crossing routes and outlet passes to Josh Downs is probably something you're going to see more in Anthony Richardson's repertoire this year to just avoid being hurt so much, which would be nice for everyone involved, right? So I like Downs more than Mitchell throughout the course of the season, but if he can't get back on the field, let's say he misses week 1, no big deal. If he starts missing week 2, we'll have to reassess that position and see where they come in the weekly rankings. Jahmyr Gibbs is good to go with his hamstring injury, according to Dan Campbell. I still knocked him. I spoke about it with Jake in that big show if you want to go back and hear a full assessment of the situation. But it kind of boils down to a few things where even with the hamstring injury, well, he might be good to play. Does that mean he's going to have the dominant role in the backfield? It could, but there's still times when he's fully healthy where David Montgomery is still the lead back. It's not like David Montgomery has gone anywhere. I still have Gibbs ranked above David Montgomery, but I think on a week-to-week basis, you're going to flip a coin between these guys to see who scores the touchdown. With that lingering hamstring injury, it does worry me to the effect that even if it's a big Gibbs game and they're feeling that he's beating that defense and it's not Montgomery, that you're still not going to see him get 80, 75% of the snaps. It's going to be close to 50-50 as it is. And if, God forbid, anything crops up in that game, a little bit of a tweak, he's going to be on the sidelines. So I am a little bit nervous about Jahmyr Gibbs in week 1. I do think for the course of the season, once he is fully healthy, which could be this week, and maybe I'm just being a bit cowardly with the entire ranking, but I do think there are better options with more volume in week 1 that you can rely on without that downside of having an existing injury coming into the week. The ditto with Jalen Waddle, who had not been practicing at all. He is back at practice. He is going to play, but he's just below Devonta Smith in the mid-20s for me this week, and I still have Tyreek with his thumb injury. He says he's good to go, just needed a day off inside the top 3. It's Tyreek, it's Waddle. You're going to have your games where it's a bit interchangeable. It's a little akin to the Gibbs and Montgomery situation when we're thinking about it from fantasy prospects, but we've just seen Hill dominate that target share and the fantasy points. Now, Waddle can still come along and be good. It's no different than me ranking Gibbs a little bit ahead of Montgomery in the situation where I know that Montgomery is going to outscore him some of the time, but especially when you think about upside, that's where Hill dominates Jalen Waddle, who has been dealing with an injury for the past 4 weeks. Let's not forget that. Just because guys are practicing doesn't mean they're at 100%. So that's how I feel about Waddle, and that's how I feel about Gibbs. And obviously, I'm full in on Tyreek. I think there's nothing going to be wrong with him. Lastly, Michael Thomas, Slant Boy. You might remember him. He has been suspended 1 game by the NFL. Unfortunately, he's not on a team, so I don't know if that means like if 1 week goes by, he can come back, or he actually has to sign with the team, then serve the suspension, and then he can play. Either way, I just want to throw out the name Michael Thomas. Once drafted as the wide receiver 1 overall, very rarely do you see a career go downhill that quickly, but here we are with Michael Thomas. As I mentioned, the full rankings list for every position is down in the description right now. The link is free. The Mayo Media newsletter is free. I suggest you subscribe because then you'll just get it sent right to you. You can bookmark it, and I'll have the updates going. I have the date at the top so you can see when I have changed the rankings on which day. All the hyperlinks are in there as well. Underdog Fantasy, code Mayo, gets you $1,000, up to at least, on a first-time deposit. And if you have an Underdog handle or you want to play in that Pick'em League to get your hands on the $25,000 of guaranteed money, go fill out the Google form in the description. It takes like 10 seconds to do. Smash a like while you're here. Sub to Mayo Media Network if you prefer the audio versions. Hell, go check out the Pat Mayo Experience on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, all right? More to come this week. The next rankings update will come either Friday evening or Saturday morning probably Saturday morning after the Friday Brazil game. Then we get a full sense of what's happened at Friday practice, and I can fully update both my projections and my rankings. Again, all in that link in the description, so make sure you're tuned to that, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!